We'll be getting started in just a moment. Sorry, we're having a little technical difficulty.
Can you see me now?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We had some last minute things to sort out. Can you hear me all right, Christopher?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Excellent.
I'll be running the slides.
I'll share your screen and run the slides at this point.
But I'm saying I'll be running the slides. Instead of you guys running the slides.
Okay. So we've just had to move some things around, and we had a setup all ready to go, and then that literally last minute got completely scrambled. So we're just fixing things right now. So just for logistical purposes, James is going to be sharing his he's going to be presenting on slides for a while, and then when he's done, we're going to remake you as the host, Christopher, and then you'll have the ability to share your screen, do your slides and stuff.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm running slides.
You're ready. So just share your screen.
Okay, I think we are about to get going.
I'm going to just give a couple more seconds or another minute for anybody online. We had a couple people just say that they were just getting off.
All right, it looks like people are going to be joining in a couple of minutes, but I will start the introductions. For those of you watching online or recording, hello, my name is Lydia. I am the marketing manager for Envision Wealth Planning. My boss, James Brewer, is a CFP and also an educator for financial literacy here in Chicago. He's been in several different books and articles, from Forbes to New York Times to the book called Financial Behavior. And he works on his certificates tirelessly to make sure that he has the best advice to give. In Envision Wealth ourselves are around all over the US, even though we are focused here in Chicago. So if you can see all of our lovely little pins that tell you where we are, where we have clients, where we can provide assistance, which is all over the US. So we're really excited to have you here. We hope that you'll get to know us through this and also get to know 401ks and ways that you can use them to your best advantage. We are also having a guest speaker that we will introduce in a little bit, Mr. Christopher Tipper, and I will hand it over to JB.
Okay, hopefully this means that I can be heard. So, I got to keep my attorneys happy. So there's some disclosures here. Basically, it says that this is not specific advice to you that you should be acting on. Consider it education. And with that, it's much easier when you're reading and you can see it online on the replay. So we're going to talk a little bit today about some of the parties to the 401k. A lot of people don't realize that there's more than one. And what's a 401k third-party administrator? What do they actually do? But ultimately, how do you use your 401k plan to increase your chances of a comfortable retirement? And then ultimately, that's going to mean investing. So how do you get those investment returns? We have a service that we provide that I'll give you a little bit more insight as we get further into the presentation. So let me start with, who are the parties to a 401k? Who are the parties to a 401k? So this diagram, and the title says it's the typical direct model with no fiduciary liability sharing. If you are someone who is a owner, chief financial officer, human resource person, and you touch and make decisions regarding the 401k, then you are known as a fiduciary, one that should be responsible. And this direct model, which happens often, people simply make a call to one of the providers. We're not recommending Fidelity. We just know that they're one of the largest, so we're using that to give us a diagram. And a lot of people say, well, hey, I have Fidelity. Well, underneath the surface of having Fidelity, there is something known as record keeping and third-party administration. They typically have a set document that they use, and it seems really nice and easy to go and set up. But notice up at the right corner, investment provider, I use the word proprietary investments. So usually you're going to see Fidelity mutual funds because you call Fidelity. A bit like, hey, if I call my State Farm agent, I expect they're going to tell me about State Farm. If I call Allstate, I expect they're going to tell Allstate. And if you have thought that Fidelity is okay, then maybe that's great. Now, unfortunately, as a responsible plan fiduciary, you are supposed to show some level of due diligence in your decision, not that you previously knew about Fidelity, or a spouse was Fidelity and you called up and that was your selection, and that just holds. So there's another way you could do things, and that is you hire a broker. You might call them financial advisor, but for the purposes here, we're going to say broker. Often you might be signing a document that says broker of record. You, again, probably call them financial advisor, but it will usually say broker of record. And that is a person known as a registered representative. A couple of presentations back, I went a little deeper into a registered representative, but this person does not have any liability. Now, they may just simply go with all Fidelity funds. In fact, the default investment alternative for the plan might end up being Fidelity funds, but they may add a couple of other funds on the menu, but they don't have to. But you decide that you're going to go through them to give you more guidance than you otherwise would have had yourself. Consider it recommendations, guidance. They have no fiduciary liability. But then now I'm going to give you the third. And now we are unbundling these components. So know now that in the left-hand side, I'm showing you a record keeper. There's one named a census. I'm showing you a third-party administrator, Hunter Benefits, that will be telling us more about what they actually do besides my short language here. Now you see I didn't maintain having Fidelity because there is no need for Fidelity to be a strong player if we're going to do a completely unbundled model. And notice that in the right side, I show you a custodian, Charles Schwab. That could be the custodian. That's the one that holds the investments. And then I also show investment advisor, ER, not a OR. That actually means something. And it says ERISA, short for Employee Retirement Income Security Act, a 321 designation, which then means that that individual, and I'm not the only one, or that firm is also a fiduciary. So sharing in the fiduciary liability along with the owner, CFO, and HR person, but someone bringing in an extra level of knowledge who's affirming that they actually do know that they are a fiduciary and likely brings a lot more to the table. And in my case, that's where the accredited investment fiduciary designation comes into play. So just thought I'd give you that as the backdrop. And then now when you have this, you have more options to create a more custom plan. So with that, hopefully the attractive Christopher Tipper has his microphone on. And we're going to let him start off. Hey, Christopher, welcome.
You're making me be bashful here, JB.
Well, he's our first guest that we've had on our series. So thank you for being our leadoff guest and showing guests can work, Christopher.
Well, thank you. So I guess it's time for me to share my screen now, right?
Yes, you absolutely can share your screen. So let me go and stop my sharing. But I don't know if your picture will look as good as the picture that we had of you.
No. This of course not, JB. All right, so I'm going to show, my name's Christopher Tipper. You're still sharing. What's going on?
Okay, now you're there.
I am screen sharing. Okay, why is this not?
Well, when we're live, things happen.
1 second. All right.
At the bottom. Oh, there you
go. Okay. So my name's Christopher Tipper. I have a different view on graphics than JB does. So I'm going to show kind of some of the same information, but in a slightly different format. Hunter Benefits Consulting Group is my company. We are an independent, non-producing third-party administrator. What that means, independent. We will work with employers throughout the country. We will work with reputable financial professionals. I think that's generic enough, right, JB? With reputable financial professionals throughout the country. Plan sponsors, I said, and when I say we're not producing, We don't get onto JB's side of the street, so to speak, or JB's side of the table. We're agnostic when it comes to investments. When we talk about investments, it's whether or not something is allowed, which we're not going to be getting into today, but not specific investments. Now then, how we view our role as the third-party administrator for the plan sponsor is that we are hired to keep the plan sponsor out of trouble with the IRS and the Department of Labor. All right. Now, I know we're not supposed to start off with a negative, but that's basically our function. All right. Now then, because all of these are the four main components. These are the four main tasks that you have to have when you have a qualified retirement plan. Somebody has to be a plan sponsor. That's the employer. All right. If you're an employee somewhere else and you don't own your own company, you can't have your own 401k plan. If you're going to be in a 401k plan, that needs to be sponsored by an employer somewhere, whether it's a for-profit or a not-for-profit entity. Then there's the function of there's the compliance function. That's our side. That can legally be done by the plan sponsor. There is no legal requirement that we get hired. People do try to be their own doctors and their own lawyers and their own financial professionals, so they can be their own third-party administrators as well. And then, of course, there's the financial advisor. I'm sorry, I'm using the OR here, JB. All right. The financial advisor actually is pretty much written into the code where the plan sponsor and the fiduciaries are expected to receive, and this is somebody else's phrase, not mine. Believe the phrase is still written as expert, prudent man. All right. Where they are getting the educated advice from somebody else. So that is the one part where you're really supposed to hire outside. And then, of course, record keeping. You could theoretically custodian and hold the assets yourselves, theoretically, but from an operational cost-effective point of view, that doesn't necessarily work. Now then, what we do on a more detailed level from as a third-party administrator is we help the plan sponsor make the plan legal, which means it needs to have a plan document. All right. We're going to talk about the different types of plan documents a little bit later. But in order for the plan to be operational and to be valid and to have all of its tax advantages, the plan sponsor needs to have a signed, valid, recent plan document that contains who is eligible for the plan, when they're eligible for the plan, what kinds of contributions can be made, or what kind of contributions have to be made to the plan, and when an employee no longer works for the employer or has reached normal retirement age, how they can get their money out of the plan and how much they get to get. All right. Now then, that's the plan document. On an annual basis, their employees put contributions in the plan, employers put contributions into the plan. These need to be reconciled and reported on an annual disclosure notice to the Department of Labor, which is called a Form 5500. Now, we're not expecting our clients to be filling these things out. We get the basic raw data from them, provide them with the Form 5500 to be sent to the Department of Labor. Another function that we get involved with is when a participant no longer works there, they want to take their money out of the plan, and we help to make sure that the participant is taking out the right amount. But then also for the employer side, when they want to put extra money into the plan than just a 401k contribution, we help them figure out what the appropriate contribution amounts can be or should be. Do you any questions on that, JB? Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And you just may inform people that the governing bodies for this includes the Department of Labor on top of the Internal Revenue Service that unfortunately many people don't realize.
Well, and the funny thing about this is that, and I know people are going to think I'm being silly here, but The IRS, when it comes to operating a plan, if you try to do things right and you try to fix your own mistakes, and you have somebody like us help you understand what the rules are, the IRS is actually pretty reasonable. I know that might sound like a bit of a surprise, but when it comes to qualified retirement plans, you can actually work with them. It's a good thing. All right. Shall I go on to the next thing?
Yes.
All right. Now then, so just as a bit of an example, and you can tell I have a little bit more different graphic style than JB. We're talking about 401k plans. All right. Basically, this is supposed to be a little lighthearted here, but this is an idea of what the spectrum of retirement plans are in the United States. All right. Every company is somewhere along here. They're either doing nothing, which is unfortunately still most of the employers in this country. They can buy lottery tickets, a little bit risky. They can set up an IRA for their own selves. For those of you that have businesses in Illinois, there is Illinois Secure Choice. I don't have a slide on that right now, but we can talk about that in a second. There is something called a SEP. I've got some conversations about that. A simple IRA, which is in between a SEP and a 401k, your basic 401k, and then all the way over to a coordinated 401k plan with a type of pension plan. Now let's talk about Illinois Secure Choice for a second. Illinois was the first state in the union to sign a mandatory employee retirement plan option. It was not the first to implement it. It was the first to sign the law. And basically what we are at right now is if it is an Illinois entity that has been in business for more than 2 years, it's for profit, and right now has 16 or more employees, and starting in November has 5 or more employees, they need to have some kind of retirement plan. If they do not have a SEP, a simple IRA, a simple 401k, a profit sharing plan, a 401k plan, anything like that, they need to be having their employees be given the option to contribute to Illinois Secure Choice. I don't know how much you want me to go into this, JB. It's better than nothing, but
well, I think we could focus on 401k primarily. Like, just we talked a lot about SEP, simple, and an owner-only 401k and last month's, but you could briefly go over those for those people that may have missed that.
So just very briefly, I kind of think of the SEP as it's a bit of the Three Musketeers approach. Basically, if the employer sponsors a SEP, in essence, everybody gets the same contribution rate, not the same contribution dollar amount, the same contribution rate based on their income. There's no Roth, there's no participant loans. If you're under 49 years old and you have more than $264,000 in net earned income and you only want pre-tax money, it's the same as a 401k plan. But if you've got employees, if you've got a partner, if you've got an employee spouse, if you want Roth, if you want loans, SEPs are not the way to go. Simples are an option, okay? They are definitely better than Illinois Secure Choice. And a simple IRA or a simple 401k allows for employees to make a pre-tax contribution starting next year or 2025. Employees, I think, are going to be allowed to make Roth contributions. Still no participant loans, but there is a required employer contribution, even though the total amounts that you can put into a plan are less. Now then, because I set up 401k plans, obviously, I think every solution should start with a 401k plan, right, JB?
I love 401ks that have Roth options.
Absolutely. Well, and you're going to be very happy because starting next year, you have to basically have it as an option. Now then, your humble 401k plan, you can't have a plan, you can't have a company that's too small, you can't have a company that's too big. Walmart has a 401k plan, and many owner-only companies have 401k plans as well. Roth is an option, all right? And when we talk about Roth being required, that's a provision in a law called Secure 2.0 that's going to come into play for certain well-paid individuals. Employer, now what he's talking about there, including in-plan Roth conversions, what that means is that an employee can choose to have all or part of their employee deferral, and an employee deferral is what an employee chooses to have taken out of their paycheck to be put in the plan. They can choose to have that be pre-tax or Roth, all right? Now, what you can do on top of that is if there's employer money in the plan, because that money is pre-tax, the individual employee can choose to convert all, some, or part, or none of that amount to Roth when they want. That is at the employee's discretion. You don't have to have an employer contribution in a 401k plan. You can have different eligibility provisions. You basically have a lot more choice here. Not every employee has to be in the plan. In other words, you can have an eligibility waiting period and things like that. Whoops, sorry. Oh, we're not going to get, we'll get into secure in a second here. Now then, I don't have a slide for this, but what we need to understand is that 401k plans are equally beneficial for the employee as well as the employer. From the employee's point of view, research has shown by several different institutions that employees are able to put more money away for themselves to reduce their own retirement gap when they're able to do it through payroll deduction. A 401k plan by default is a payroll deduction amount. It could be as little as $5, $10, $15, whatever, a paycheck. An employee doing that amount is going to be much better off than somebody trying to do it on their own in an IRA. That's what the research shows. You also get the benefits of dollar cost averaging. I'm presuming I can use that phrase, JB, because it's a fact inside 401k plans.
It is.
So what you also have is when you have a 401k plan, you don't have investment minimums. A lot of times when you set up an IRA, you may have, for a particular fund, you may have a $2,000 minimum before you can buy into that particular fund. When you set up a 401k plan, you could be in your $10 a paycheck, you could be putting that into 10 different investment options. That wasn't investment advice. We're just talking math here, JB. Okay. And there's not a lot of mutual funds or other investment options that you can get for $1 a pay period. Then you've got.
And if I could add to that, one of my favorites is, which is why I believe people should work with an ERISA 321. I'm not the only one. There are others out there, but there are some funds that if you can get to a $250,000 or multi-million-dollar, there's a lower cost of that fund. There are internal costs in all mutual funds. So now that person with the $5, $10 is now getting pricing that is at the $250,000 level. I look at it like going to Costco and you share a bunch, a single roll of toilet paper.
I was just going to use that same example. Yeah, you can buy the one roll of toilet paper for the 960 roll pack price, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So again, from an employee's point of view, it's impossible for the employer to have. Well, you're going to have Roth in there. You may have a participant loan as an option. You are going to have an assigned investment professional assigned to the plan to help you figure out what you should be doing. And also, many plans, not all of them, but many plans have an employer match. All right. And the match is when an employer agrees to make a contribution to the plan for those people who defer. All right. There are other contributions possibilities on top of that. Now, then that's from the employee's point of view. From the employer's point of view, these days, it's working out to be a great retention tool. I don't know what you're seeing in Chicago and other neighborhoods, JB, but when I drive around, I see marquees on businesses and signs at other employers saying, we're hiring, we offer a 401k plan. I have yet to see an employer in Illinois saying, we're hiring, we're part of Illinois Secure Choice, or we're hiring and you get to be in a simple plan, all right? From an employer's point of view, right? I mean, it just doesn't happen. From an employer's point of view, the 401k plan has some real good cachet. It is helping retain and attract employees these days. Yes, there's some nice tax deductions for the employer, all right? And with Secure 2.9, we're going to get to some slides on this in a minute here. There are some tax credits for employers starting a brand new plan, all right? And you can get a credit for some of your employer contribution for some of your employees, all right? Now then, it is, and it says, as it says there at the bottom, it is theoretically possible to have the same lump sum benefit at age 65 that you could get in a traditional defined benefit plan inside a 401k plan. But yeah, you need the employer is going to be making some contributions there. I think that's a pretty equal conversation about the benefits for the employee and the employer, JB. That's sufficient. So
yeah, and well, in the interest of time, we might save some things for a Q&A.
Okay, all right. So what I'm gonna okay. So very JB, we've got some possible questions going on here, but I can very easily go over. So I'm going to try to make something short, and like I say, leave it for Q&A. All right. JB's first slide, where he was talking about an entity taking care of everything. All right. That's referred to as bundled. In our company, it's pronounced bungled, but spelled the same way. Okay. Now, very often what you have there is a plan design that is very simple. Well, is very vanilla. Okay. No creativity, short eligibility span. Everybody's immediately 100% vested. Maybe a safe harbor contribution is required. Maybe there's an extra discretionary employer contribution, but it's going to be something where everybody gets the same thing. All right. Now, when you work with a firm like ours, you can have things be a lot more creative. From the employer's point of view, you don't have to let everybody in the plan. All right. I have an office in Washington State. We could theoretically exclude that office from our plan. All right. Wouldn't be smart, may not be a good employee culture thing, but what I'm talking about is what the law lets you do. All right. So you have to cover the vast majority of your employees, but not everybody. The law also allows, with the right plan design, the law also allows for employers to make contributions based on age. All right. So in other words, when somebody's older, they've got fewer years to retirement than somebody who's 22 years old. So the law lets the employer make larger percentage contributions to those employees. And when you have a custom design plan as opposed to a cookie cutter design plan, you get that kind of creativity. And obviously, that creativity is what my company excels in. Now then, there's something called Secure. We're talking about Secure 2.0. This started in December of 2019 with Secure 1.0. We're now at Secure 2.0. We're going to give some examples of the startup credit. There's a credit for any plan, any small plan under 100 employees adding auto enrollment. There is going to become a feature that employers need to be aware of starting in 2024 about long-term part-time employees. And if you're an employer and you haven't filed your taxes yet for 2022, forgot what year it was, sorry, if you've extended your tax return for 2022 and you don't have a plan for 2022, let JB know, because you can still start an employer-sponsored retirement plan for 2023. And we're not going to talk about the increased penalties for late 5500s. All right. Now then, so we're going to give you so what we're talking about here is if an employer starts a plan in 2023 and they have non-highly compensated employees, in other words, it's not just owner onlys, you have rank and file, all right, you are going to be able to get a tax credit of $250 per non-highly compensated employee that will cover up to 100% of your startup costs. So if you have, you've got under 100 employees, 21 non-highly compensated employees, and the startup costs are $6,000. This can include my fees. Maybe you want to pay JB with a check instead of out of plan assets, and you got record keeper fees. You know, everybody's got to get paid a little bit. So let's just say that adds up to $6,000. 21,000 times 250 equals $5,200, but you're limited to you're going to get a $5,000 tax credit to cover that $6,000 in fees. Under the old rules, you'd have gotten $3,000, and before 2020, you'd have gotten $500. So the government is definitely seeing the retirement gap, and they're trying to do what they can to help employers start new plans. Now then, on top of this, there's an employer contribution tax credit, all right? For every employee, doesn't have to be a non-highly, for every employee, if you start a plan this year and that employee is making less than $100,000, you will get up to $1,000 credit. So this is a different sample company. So we have an employee making over $100,000, all right? There's no tax credit for that person. But we've got all these different employees making different wages, getting different made up employer contribution amounts. It can be a sum of profit sharing and profit sharing. This employer could theoretically get a $9,800 tax credit for employer contributions for year 1 and year 2. It reduces for 3, 4, and 5, on top of up to a $5,000 tax credit for starting the plan. That's the really, really, really good part of Secure 2.0. When it gets to over 50 employees, it phases out. This works really well, obviously, for 50 or fewer employees. And then even if you started your plan, even if you started your 401k plan in 1995 and you add auto enrollment now, you can get a $500 credit for this year, next year, and for the following year. In other words, for the first 3 years, you've got it. Okay. JB, do you want me to talk a little bit about what auto enrollment is, or just skip over it?
Skip over it because I'm going to cover it in a moment. But from what you're just showing you in these slides, it seems like the federal government wants 401k plans and not Illinois Secure Choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, they may not have thought of it that way, but there's tremendous value in Secure 2.0 because they do realize that there is a retirement readiness gap. Illinois Secure Choice is going to help reduce that, but it's not going to close it. When an employer offers a 401k plan, there's a much higher likelihood of being able to reduce that retirement readiness gap. This is the way to go. And I think I've reached my allotted time, JB.
Well, we appreciate all that you have done in your time, and I'm sure there's some things that we can talk about in the
Q&A. Absolutely. I'm not going anywhere.
All right, so I guess it's back to my slides. Can you see me? Or can you see how to use your plan to increase your chances of comfortable retirement slide, Christopher?
Not being stared.
Okay, then I better do something differently than what I'm doing. So like I'm gonna do there. Okay. Have I done it now? Did you see that slide? I'm just trying to get a verification.
Yeah, slide is up and moving.
All right,
you may want to just hit presentation mode.
Okay, got it. Do I click this little arrow? Okay, so now let's look at all the stuff that a 401k gives you, because ultimately, as Christopher said, everyone wants people to have a comfortable retirement and not to necessarily lean on completely looking for some government benefits, which is why the federal government and the state of Illinois both have try to jump in the pool. But although 401ks pre-existed, they were given to us by the federal government anyway. So there are two things, or two approaches, if you will, regarding retirement plan and 401k. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is what I refer to as the auto retirement plan, the auto retirement plan. So this is when the employer uses certain functions. So what Christopher was about to tell you is this automatic enrollment. So what you can do as the employer is you automatically enroll your employee at whatever time your plan document says, but they don't affirmatively say, I'm in, you make the decision. Then they have to decline. But we know that most people don't decline. They stick with what the plan is. And, oh, somebody said, like, kind of like your iPhone, there's lots of defaults turned on. They're not all like against you, but they're helping you move forward with the technology. In this case, it's the 401k plan. And then there's a default savings rate. And there's often a match. So there's a way to help you avoid some of the testing kinds of things that go on in 401ks. Just commonly, it's known as the match. And I talk to a lot of people and they say, ooh, I like a match, so I'm going to save in my plan because there's a match. So if there was, say, a 3% savings match, and you then would have 6% total, in a way I like to think of it as, wow, you actually made more money than what your salary actually said. And some places they'll give you 7% on your 3%. And I heard of someone yesterday that they would give up to $15,000 no matter. So that's their ultimate thing, as opposed to doing a percent savings match. And then the next component of that would be a default investment. So there's something called a qualified default investment alternative. Impress all your friends that you can say QDIA or qualified default investment alternative. These days, a lot of people are in something called a target date fund, a target date fund. But before the target date fund existed, there was something called a balance fund, which is about 60% stock, 40% bond. That's roughly what every company who has a balance fund. There's the asset allocation fund, and asset allocation funds are similar to that balance fund, except they add that maybe you can have a 40% stock and 60% bond, or you have an 85% stock and a 15% bond. They're known as asset allocation funds. And essentially every company that has a target date fund has asset allocation funds that underneath them. And that's kind of how it works. So basically at different time periods along what's known as the glide path. So 25%, you might be near 100% stock, but towards being 65, 70, 75, you likely are going to be saying 25% stock and 75% bond. There's no standard on target date funds. In fact, there's some that I feel it's kind of confusing, because if you try to compare one target date fund to another, you have to know if, is it going to be to a retirement age of 65, or is it going to be through a retirement of age of 65? And maybe it's not even 65, maybe it's 70. You might be retiring at 70, or you might be retiring at 65. Maybe you want to even retire at 60. So, but that's essentially what an automatic retirement plan, you're just accepting somebody else's defaults. But because that's one of the reasons why I have Christopher on today, is I like personalized. I like customized. So let's personalize your retirement plan. So we talked last time, and Christopher showed on one of his slides that today, 2023, you can save up to $22,500, but if you're over 50, you can make that $30,000. So of those dollar amounts, how much do you need to save? That has nothing to do with the match. It has to do everything with how much do you need to save. But then even that question should be based on what average rate of return. Like if you're in a money market, you won't get the same growth as if you decided to go into the equivalent of an all stock position. And then, well, still further, like, well, Will you be withdrawing the money on a regular basis, or will you be doing something called annuitizing? Annuitizing essentially like, hey, I'm going to give the money to, let's say it's a insurance company and they're going to send me checks for life. That's similar to Social Security and workplace pensions. And then how much you're going to spend. Really, we probably should start with how much you could spend, but these are the factors that I just kind of went going backwards, because if you want to spend $20,000 versus spend $80,000 a year, it's going to be a big difference. So let's talk a little bit more about personalized retirement plan. So I pulled some research that I think is the best. That goes back to 2007, the best to be instructional, and it comes from the National Savings Rate Guidelines for individuals. So basically, let's read this slide and say that if you started at age 25, I'm just going to highlight the 20,000, you'd need to save about 1.4% if all you wanted to do was replace your gross income at 60%. That's replacing the gross income. That's not the net. That's simply replacing the gross. But if you wanted to have a gross of 80%, then you need to save 6.8%. If you be blessed to make 80 grand, then that number would be 13.8% and 8%. But I know a lot of people are likely encumbered with some student loan debt, so maybe you can't save right away. Well, if you paid your student loan debt over 20 years, I'm just now going to focus on the 80, then that number now will be 22% and 13.2, but don't be too depressed. You just got rid of the student loan debt that won't keep going up. And now let's just say the funds that were flowing out for that, now you can flow to here. And then I'm going to jump ahead to age 50. So if you waited until age 50, now you got to save 33.4% and 56.8%. I don't know many people who could live on 56.8. I don't really know many people who could live on 33.4%. There's just a lot of factors. So basically, this is saying the sooner that you save, the better. So that's just quickly referring back to the limits. Now I'm going to give you a quick hypothetical case. So let's take somebody who's about 40 years of age. They make 50 grand. Notice they're married. So let's add another $30,000 to that to make 80. And let's see how that tracks. So we're looking to save about, we're looking to save, trying to move something here on my screen. We're looking to save 17.4%. All right, so let's see how we might be able to make that happen. Well, in this particular sample, there's a 5% match, and we're just kind of giving you an idea of how this might affect your paycheck, because often people say, hey, savings is great, but how's this going to affect my paycheck? So this one shows that there is $208.52 to be captured if they max. Today they weren't maxing, so if they went up to $208.52, then they now start to see that they're going to get a lot more money in savings. And at least the first increment's not too bad, $25.64. By the way, this is an annual 12 payments, not 24 or 26. So this is per month, so $25.64. It's probably a few coffees, depending upon where you go. But if you got all the way to 10%, but again, you are telling yourself, I want to live 60% gross. Keep that in mind. So who are you harming? So why not get at least the full 208.52? And unfortunately, we saw the longer you wait, the more money you have to save. So this is what would happen, at least in terms of monthly cash flow. So then we have the question of rate of return, because that ultimately is our real answer, rate of return. So let's just focus primarily on we needed to save 10%. if you get a 6% return, that's about 400,000. 8 gets you 500, 10 at about 655. Now it's really easy to look at a chart like this and go, okay, I'll take the 10 maybe because I get 655, but that's really going to mean a lot of up and down movement. In fact, these days, most of us don't really believe that 10%, which is a long-term average for the S&P 500 that used to get quoted a lot, but those things are changing over time. And will you really get 10? And by the way, how queasy will you be as you see the ups and downs of the market? So maybe 8% is a better number. And you really work on the savings piece because we really can't control returns. They're out of our control. What we are in control of more so is how much we can save. Of course, that always assumes that you're employed, but finding the money in your budget, cutting things out to carve out more money so you could get that $185 a month that was going to get you to the 10%. So this is how you would kind of put it all together. So it's not just a singular thing if you're going to personalize it. So we always like to add a little from information to action. So today it's going to be a little bit of a commercial that I'll tell you for our service that we call K-vesting, like 401k vesting. Got it? For K-vesting. So in K-vesting, first we start with something like a very specific plan. So this one gives you a sample of, someone where we want to know all their cash flow sources that they have today, things they're going to have in the future, if they have, what assets they have available, and figure out their plan, and then what expected rate of return on capital they need. So then we go to next. Well, now that we know what we need, what investments do you have in your employer plan? Since we started K-vesting, I've had a number of people tell me that they didn't think they had choices in their 401k plan. They said, I just think I have a target date fund. I'm not sure how that happened. Maybe it's this whole living on default, but you have more choices typically. I'd be frightened if you didn't. But through some software that we use, we're able to download, in this case, this plan, besides its target date funds, had global bonds and equity emerging markets and global and equity US and mid cap. You don't really need to know all those terms. I do, and you should find reputable professionals, I believe investment advisor representatives with certified financial planner or chartered financial analyst credentials. And then in our case, we look at what choices you have in your plan. And based upon the choices you have in your plan, we have several different recipes that we can use. I call it recipes like investing. Maybe there's an analogy to like fried chicken. So, the Colonel's doesn't taste like Church's, doesn't taste like Popeyes, and if you're in Chicago, doesn't taste like Harold's. There's even arguments on which one of the Harold's potentially tastes better than the other. So it's a case of, well, what do I need for the ingredients? And if I don't have the ingredients, I can't make that kind. So that's what we look at. What do you actually have in your menu? Then we put that into one of our recipes. And then we give you a spit out, hey, based upon the rate of return that you have targeted, let's say it's a 6% or an 8% or a 5% or whatever it is that we've targeted. In this case, we see that there was a 6% return. If that's the need that you want, if that's the target that you need, that's what we're going to go after. Not any more, not any less. That's what we're going to try to go after based upon whatever the right recipe that historically has given some idea that that's what we're going to reach. It's just not one size fits all. So again, it's a combination of how much you're going to save and the investment return that you get. And that's our K-vesting really quick. So hopefully in summary, you've learned who the parties to the 401k are. What does Hunter Benefits and other 401k third-party administrators do? How to use your plan to increase your chances of a comfortable retirement, because it's just, the 401k kind of gives you the ingredients, tries to make it easy with the contributions that you get to do with payroll, but it doesn't give you instructions on how much of any of those things to do. As well as, how our K-vesting service might be able to help you get the investment returns you need, because the target date fund isn't designed to get you the investment returns that you need. It's just someone's idea of a logical path, but it never tells you to save more or save less or how much you need to save. In fact, there are some cases that I found where people were oversaving because they heard the lingo, hey, you should maximize your 401k. And they took that to mean save 22.5. Some people heard the language of max your 401k, and they thought, well, that was simply getting all the match. Those are two disparate numbers in most cases, unless you're very high income. So with that, we are putting this slide up. If you'd like to kind of engage in a further, deeper relationship with us, this QR code will be helpful in getting the process started. If you have questions specific on anything that we've covered today, you can also email marketing, or possibly you've got some topics that you'd like for us to talk about in the future. So why don't we take about 5 minutes to open things up for any Q&A. I'd like to start, by the way, and ask Christopher a question. He had said something about plan design and age and potentially excluding. Can you talk, Christopher, from a design perspective, and we've talked about this before, of the kind of equal savings distribution versus a equitable savings distribution?
Are you talking about how class allocation works?
Yes, that's the best way. But
okay.
See, he uses the high-tech terms. I try to come up with the simple.
Okay, well, for us, okay, sorry. All right. Basically, simply put, the IRS has given us two different definitions to determine whether or not something is fair. All right. And yes, the second example is going to exclude compounding interest, JB, so don't put your math hat on. All right. So the idea is that the most common way, especially the way that was used up till almost all the time, up till about 10 years ago, was looking at things from today, whether or not something was fair today. And how they determined that was either everybody got the same percent of eligible compensation. So let's say you give everybody 7.5%. Well, that's fair. Everybody gets 7.5%. Or the employer's got a different concept and they're going to give everybody $2,000 regardless of how much they make. Okay, that's another definition of fair. Everybody gets the exact same dollar amount. Okay, but the other definition of fair lets us look at age and expected date of retirement. Now, when we talk about normal retirement age, that's simply a date in the future that we do math on. All right, you don't have to stop working then. So let's say we have normal retirement age of age 65. And we have a 55-year-old and we have a 25-year-old. And we're giving everybody $1,000. Well, the 55-year-old is going to have $10,000 of retirement, and the 25-year-old is going to have $40,000 of retirement. When we look at that point of view, that's not fair. So the secondary definition of fair lets us look at age. So we would give the 55-year-old $4,000 so that both of them have $40,000 at normal retirement age. So that's why age works out. The vast majority of employers have older owners and younger staff. And also most owners take more income than most of their staff. All right. So when you have an older owner and younger staff, we are able to legally and per the IRS definition rules fairly give older owners a larger percentage than what they're giving to their rank and file. Is that what we're, and that's as short and as simple as I can make it. I hope that helps a little bit.
And I believe that the slide that I showed from the 2007 research shows that the higher compensated workers need a much higher percentage
Yep.
of savings in order for them to reach the same replacement rates.
Correct.
So I wanted the audience just to understand that this was not something that potentially was discriminatory and against something. It's taking into a myriad of factors. And, you know, often, and I kind of relate to this, you know, business owners who, you know, had to live potentially on ramen for a while, finally, ideally get to a point in their career where, you know, the business is finally making some money, but similar to that slide, didn't have the ability to get started saving.
Exactly.
So now they're at the time when they can save. They couldn't save before.
But the time frame short.
So this just gives the ability for plan design experts like you to, you know, get the factors of each employer that you work with and discover and create the design that is actually the right one for you.
Right. Well, if I could add real quickly to something you said a second ago is, you know, I have a lot of potential prospects and clients ask us, can I discriminate? No, discrimination's illegal. Okay. You can't do that. The better question is, do I have to give absolutely everybody the exact same rate or same dollar amount? No, the IRS gives us rules that lets us squeeze legally and fairly per the IRS, move things around a little bit.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for being our first guest.
Hopefully not your last.
Yes. Well, you know, hopefully we won't get any, you know, hate mail to our marketing at envisionwealth.us. And I'm sure that there'll be more questions. There's just a lot to absorb, even as you were saying some things. It's taken me years to learn what I've learned. And I always know when to call in an expert.
Thank you.
Because every time, you know, like you talked about the phrase prudent expert, I will say that, you know, often what some people think might be an expert, which often has to do with a business card that has a familiar brand name on it, doesn't necessarily mean that the person you're talking to is actually a prudent expert. So,
yes.
So thank you again, and we will close it out now.
Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good day, everybody.
All right. Yes, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining EMMS this month. We will be doing another one next month for college student debt repayments, as those are restarting at the end of June. Well, they're restarting in October, but we're finding out the results of the legislation at the end of June. So next month on the 27th, July 27th, we will be talking about ways to repay student loans to take care of that debt that will be unfreezing in October. Thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy this recording. Bye.
Bye.